What up, flockers? In this video, we're going to review the Superb Parrot. Now, these birds are so cool. They're extremely fun-loving and super colorful. I mean, these are one of the greenest parrots you'll ever see. And they also have this really cool yellow face with a red throat once they're adults. And it just makes them one of the coolest looking parrots ever. Now, this baby Superb Parrot comes from Omar's Exotic Birds, which is my go-to parrot store here in Southern California, and where I got a lot of my flock. Because in my opinion, they're the store that has birds out in public for people to interact like a petting zoo, and that helps make the birds super friendly, and I think is a good model for other stores to mimic. But while they did not sponsor this video, they were really nice to offer me this Superb Parrot for this video review. So for that, guys, thank you so much. Now, you may know of the Superb Parrot under another couple names. They're also known as the Barraband Parakeet and the Green Leek Parrot. Though the name Green Leek Parrot is a common name that kind of applies to multiple species of parrots. So more often than not, you'll hear Barraband as the alternative. Now, these amazing parrots come to us from Southeast Australia, and they have a lifespan in captivity of about 15 to 30 years. Now, coming from Australia, these parrots are actually very hardy pets, and that's why they're also decently popular aviary birds, where people will build a giant cage outside and keep a whole flock of these birds. They're generally a popular bird to keep in aviaries if people are looking for a quiet aviary bird, with still a very fun personality to entertain. Now, a very interesting thing about these birds is they do not have any green pigment in their feathers at all. That's right, their feathers actually bend like and reflect a very bright iridescent green color. And to really appreciate that, you gotta see this bird in the harsh sun, and they are just as green as you can imagine. Now, these parrots are actually sexually dimorphic, meaning that males and females do in fact look different. The males will have the bright yellow face with the red throat, whereas females do not have that. They're kind of just more of a mellow, muddy kind of a green color. As generally when it comes to the animal kingdom, males are the ones that have to show off in order to attract a mate. Now, these birds, even you just look at this bird and you'll notice it looks a lot like a princess parrot, and they are very closely related. And I would say a lot of the personality is very similar to princess parrots, also somewhat similar to a cockatiel, just because they're all kind of the Australian parrot that's kind of lower on the food chain in a way. So their personalities are somewhat cat-like if I were to describe it. But the question is this parrot the right parrot for you? And to break that down, we got our 6 categories, which are going to be handleability, quietness, talking ability, care, hardiness, and upfront costs. Now, if you guys find this review really valuable, please make sure you hit like for the YouTube algorithm, especially if you want people to see just how amazing these absolutely superb parrots are, because they're really great pets. And also, my goal for this channel is to review every single parrot in existence. Seriously, I'm trying to do that. So if you want to follow along my journey, please make sure you hit subscribe and the notification bell so you can follow along on this amazing journey. And with that aside, let's go ahead and get started with this video. Now, first off is handleability, and for that I give the Superb Parrot a score of 4 out of 5. They are really easy to handle and really friendly parrots actually, but not at first. They are a bit of a skittish bird, kind of like a cockatiel and a princess parrot. You see, these birds in the wild aren't very high on the food chain, and they do get hunted quite a bit by other predators. So they do tend to be more of a cautious parrot in the very beginning. But if you keep up with handling with these birds, they actually end up being really sweet once you gain their trust. And they just end up being really fun. Like, they will crawl all over you and they'll play with you. They'll sometimes be somewhat cuddly if they really have a strong bond with you. And they're very curious and they like to explore. Now, I will say that they are kind of more of a bird brain kind of parrot. So not so much the big personality parrot, but more of a big personality bird, if that makes sense. And that's just more so because they're a lot more like simple-minded and trying to focus on survival in the wild versus working on entertaining themselves like some of the other parrots that don't really have as many predators. But as such, these parrots do form a very strong flock mentality, and when the bird understands that you are part of its flock, they become very trustworthy and become very loyal companions. And as such, they can become a pretty good family parrot. And I would say they can actually get along with kids as long as the kids aren't very grabby, because that will definitely scare away a parrot like this and lose trust very quickly. But as long as you respect the bird and give it space, they are very handleable birds and they are really fun to have. Now next up is quietness, and for quietness I give this bird a score of 4 out of 5. They are a very quiet parrot, and they're also a very popular choice for aviaries if people are wanting a very quiet aviary. Now they can sometimes vocalize a bit frequently, especially if you have a male, but they're actually very low volume parrots, especially for their size. I mean, normally you get a conure this size and it is going to be one of the loudest birds you've ever had. But these birds, despite their size, are very low volume, and as such they are really great pets for apartments. But then next up is going to be talking ability, and for talking ability, this bird has a score of 3 out of 5. Yeah, that's right. Normally on this scale, quiet birds tend to not be talking birds, but these superb parrots are actually quite decent at talking. They can actually be quite the chatterbox, and especially if you get a male, these birds will pick up a decent number of phrases and they'll just be chattering quite a bit. Definitely a low volume and not the best clarity, but if you are wanting a quiet bird for an apartment setting but also want a decent chance at a talking parrot, getting a male, which is probably what you're gonna get because the males do have the really cool yellow face, well, you'll also have better luck at getting a decently talking bird. So if you want something bright and colorful and talks, these birds are probably a really good idea for you. Now their voice is, again, a little scratchy and kind of a high-pitched kind of a sound. Not as high-pitched as, like, say, an Indian ringneck. So if you're looking for like a very accurate talker, obviously this bird isn't going to be for you. You're going to be looking at something more like an African gray. But for the size and how hardy and easy to take care of these parrots are, this parrot's probably going to be a better option for most people. Now next up on this list is going to be care, and for care I give the superb parrot a score of 4 out of 5. These parrots are pretty easy to take care of. They're very low maintenance, especially for a bird this size, because they're not necessarily high energy birds. If you're going for like a larger medium-sized bird like this, generally you're getting like a conure or something, and those things are just hyper and they're just all over the place. But this bird is of just a quiet, kind of low energy bird, and as such they don't really have demanding personalities, which is going to be great. But you still definitely want to keep up handling these birds, just because they are naturally a kind of a flighty personality, and if you don't keep up constant handling with these birds, they will revert back to their flighty selves, and they will regain that shyness. So you definitely want to keep up with handling these birds at least an hour a day. But I would say a requirement with these birds is being very flock-minded birds. I would definitely say you should have this bird definitely in the center of your household, so they're getting constant attention from people, passerbys and whatnot, just because you want this bird to feel like it's one of the flock and not revert to a flighty personality. Now another thing about these birds is they do really like foraging quite a bit, so looking into like foraging toys or getting like a little small cardboard box and just filling it with paper, like crumbs of paper and some seeds in there. But aside from that, a normal amount of toys and a decently sized cage. These birds do have long tails and they're medium size. So again, rule of thumb, get the largest cage you can, but also not being particularly high energy. They don't need a massive cage per se, but just enough that they can stretch their wings out and not have their tail rub against the flooring of the cage. Then you put the parrot on your normal pellet diet, daily fresh water, and some fruits and veggies, and you overall got a solid setup for this parrot. Overall, a very low maintenance parrot compared to some other birds. And again, they're just so easy to take care of, that's why they're popular aviary birds. Now next up on this list is going to be hardiness, and for hardiness I give the Superb Parrot a score of 4 out of 5. Again, they are popular aviary birds, and as such, generally people will keep hardy birds for aviaries. So they can acclimate to a wide range of temperatures very well. And as well as they're a really good medium-sized parrot, kind of like on a middle of the medium scale, and they have slightly thicker legs, which to me is kind of important because I don't like the really frail like chicken legs. A bird like this size can still be prone to crushing, like around like kids and things or furniture around the house, but I would say they're still on the better end of the spectrum, so I wouldn't be super concerned about crushing with these kind of birds, but I would still be careful and just make sure you bird proof your home. But overall, one of the hardiest pet parrots you can get. Now next up is going to be upfront costs, and for upfront costs I give this parrot a score of 3 out of 5. So they're somewhat affordable as far as parrots go. Now you can see these birds for pretty cheap sometimes just because of aviary birds, but normally when people breed for aviary birds, the parrots as babies are raised up by their mother birds, whereas pet parrots are generally hand-fed by the breeder themselves to make sure that they're hand-tamed when you purchase your parrot. And now these parrots aren't exactly the most popular birds, so they can be sometimes a little hard to find, and because of their cost is around anywhere from like $900 to $1,100. They can be a decently pricey parrot, but about normal as far as most parrots go. Now this being a very flighty birds generally like longer cages, I would say, so they can like fly from side to side, but you also want like decent floor space just so their tails don't like rub against the flooring of the cage all the time. So I would say you generally want to go for maybe like a square type of cage, but again, generally you just want to go for the biggest cage you can get. And for that, that's going to run you a few $100s. But aside from that, there's really not much extra cost other than just you're throwing in your normal amount of toys. And I would go more for like foraging toys with these. And then again, just your normal pellet diet, fresh fruits and veggies, so the upkeep isn't going to be too crazy for keeping a bird like this. It's overall going to be a low maintenance parrot after your initial investment. So now comes the final score, and for the final score I give the Superb Parrot a score of 3.7 out of 5. So as you can see, this bird is just absolutely a ball of fun. And I will say, over the course of this review, it has just been the most inquisitive parrot right now. It's been a real ball. But overall, I think this bird is an absolutely amazing beginner bird, in my opinion. It's going to be a really easy to care for bird that's also very hardy, it's very quiet, and it talks. But this bird isn't for everybody, because if you're looking more for a parrot type of bird, this bird might not have the personality for you, because this bird is definitely more of a bird brain type personality. But as such, this is a very interesting bird because it has a very different personality than most parrots. If you do want to have something a little different than what most parrot people get, the Superb Parrot is gonna be a superb choice. I'm sorry guys, I did it again. I'm sorry. But overall, this is a very low maintenance parrot, and it's going to be a great part of your family if you end up choosing one. Now, if you liked it, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.